G'day Internet, my name is Lorenzo Di-Mauro Hayes, and you're watching this on my self-titled YouTube channel where I create a lot of videos about sports history meant to inform and educate, as well as my vlog series, Play-by-Play, which is meant to give people a behind-the-scenes look at my journey in Australian sports media. When I do create a more opinion-based video, like, well, this very one, I do my best to let you know up front in the title and in the contents of the video itself that you are watching an opinion video. Now, by no means does this mean I'm an infallible source, especially when I actually have to pronounce something. Taylor had been taken to the final set in each of his first 3 rounds, before eventually losing to Wayne Mardell. No, as Wayne has to remind one of his Sky Sports colleagues quite regularly, it is indeed Mardell. But nevertheless, even though I do sometimes get things wrong, that is never my intent. My calling card, my agenda is always to get to the bottom of things. It's always to get to the truth. I don't know if anyone's noticed this, but during the age of social media in particular, some folks have a slightly different agenda. The Coalition for the Protection of Racehorses, which I'll refer to as the CPR for the rest of the video, is an anti-horse racing charity founded in 2008. It was started by this man, animal rights activist Elio Chalotto. The CPR describes itself as an organisation that, quote, advocates for the horses in the racing industry. We investigate, document and expose what's going on behind the scenes in the horse racing industry. We lobby for political change and raise public awareness about the inherent cruelty in the horse racing industry. It's propaganda. The CPR is straight up propaganda. It's not there to inform or educate, but rather to indoctrinate people against the horse racing industry. And to be honest, my problem isn't the propaganda bit. To be honest, that's exactly what this video is if you just look at the plain definition. No, my problem is the fact that the CPR and the rest of what I call the anti-horse racing brigade are basically paraded around as people who should be taken seriously, and are given way too much airtime. So in this video, I am going to respond to their many claims. Here's 5 reasons why the CPR's criticisms of horse racing fall short, which in turn become 5 reasons to reject calls to ban the sport of horse racing on animal cruelty grounds. Number 1. Horse racing doesn't meet the definitions of the terms the CPR use. Let's look at the definition of 2 words that are often used by anti-horse racing people. Inhumane, without cruelty for misery or suffering. Cruel. Cruel, willfully causing pain or suffering to others or feeling no concern about it. For completeness' sake, he's willfully, with the intention of causing harm, deliberately. So the big question therefore is, does horse racing meet these terms, these definitions? And the answer to that, in the vast majority of cases, is a resounding no. Largely because it goes completely against the whole point of the sport. Horse racing, as the name implies, is all about getting the thoroughbred horse from point A to point B as quickly as possible. And if you are doing anything like, say, causing harm to a horse that would prevent it from running very quickly from point A to point B, well then that's sort of against the entire point of the sport. In the vast majority of cases, it is clear to see from behind the scenes looks in the industry, it is very clear that most horses are well looked after, they are kept pretty fit. The whole point is to keep them pretty fit because they are targeted at specific races, and the targeting of those races can change if a horse is not quite in 100% full condition. Organisations like the CPR, as well as the rest of the anti-racing brigade, like to bring up the fact that on average, a horse has to be put down on Australian racetracks every 2.5 days, but a lot of context is required. First, that is definitely an average, that is not a literal account of something that happens. And secondly, that number always hovers around the mid-100s. The latest numbers that I could find, coming from 2022-2023, looking at the number of starters in Australian racing, was 184,000. So the death rate is like minuscule, it's like not even there. And only 600 of those starters were in jumps racing, which is the slightly more dangerous form of the sport. You're more likely to get injured over the jumps than just running on the flat. So it is very clear that these accidents they're almost non-existent. It is completely possible to go to several race meetings over several years and never even see so much as a fall, let alone a horse get seriously injured. So it is pretty clear that these preventable accidents, well, they're not exactly a common occurrence by any stretch of the imagination. And before anyone brings up that ABC piece from 2019, it is abundantly clear many of the horses involved had nothing to do with the racing industry. In fact, owners of Reliable Kingdom had to take to social media confirming that their horse was alive and well, and not slaughtered as claimed by 730. If anything, that showed horses a greater risk when outside of the jurisdiction of the racing industry. It staggers me that the 730 report is still up on YouTube, as is the Juice Media's poor attempt at satire. Spoiler alert, that's not the last time in this video we'll see anti-horse racing propaganda being defended as satire. But the point is, horse racing authentically done never meets these criterias, and examples of real cruelty are antithetical to the sport. Number 2, the CPR doesn't care about the horse. Back in 2021, the CPR posted a video about what they called the goodness of a mini horse who lost her leg and had been given a prosthetic leg. There were hundreds of negative comments, including from people who claim to be their supporters because, well, doing that to a pony is not exactly what most people would call goodness. It has been pretty clear and basically admitted by organisations like the CPR that they don't actually care about the thoroughbred horse itself. It has been clear over several years that plastic horses are way more relevant to the CPR and their branding. They don't actually do anything for the horse. Elio, aforementioned, has basically admitted he's very rarely been to any sort of stud farms, for example. So it is pretty clear that the actual horse itself, the thing they're actually supposed to care about, and that name, protection of racehorses, is implying that they care about. No, not really. They've never so much as spent a cent on actually providing for horses. It's all about attacking horse racing people, attacking the horse racing industry, and it's pretty clear that the horse is sort of much further down on their plans. I love this particular photo showing a plastic horse on the back of a ute or something, and, well, wouldn't you know that, the rug is actually on backwards. That the backside of the horse should be completely covered there, and that front is supposed to go around the neck. Again, if you know even the smallest bit about horses, then you would be able to know how to put a rug on, even a plastic version, but they clearly don't, and they have the audacity of the CBR to claim that horse racing people don't care about the horse. Yeah, I think it's the wrong way round, and we see this overseas as well. The UK group Animal Rising put out a video on their social media declaring that officials began the running of the Epsom Derby even though they knew activists were on the track. The video itself clearly shows that the activists were running onto the track after the beginning of the Epsom Derby. So it is pretty clear that they are the ones that are putting the horses and themselves in danger, not the starter of that particular race. So it is pretty clear from what we've demonstrated that the CPR and a lot of the anti-horse racing brigade don't actually care about horse racing, don't actually care about the horse. And that actually links to point 3. Just quickly about the whip, because people will be upset if I don't mention it. It is clear at this point that the whip is not an item of cruelty due to the way it is used by jockeys and because of the thicker skin horses have compared to humans. One last example of this not caring about the horse was not understanding the purpose of the green screen. This is standard in all horse sports, as the graphic on the right shows from Horse SA. It is to ensure less visual stimuli for the horse, keep the horse as calm as possible, and it also allows for the safety of competitors, vets, and the on-course staff. Number 3, they have no knowledge about horse racing. Remember Shelby 66? The gelding became an amazing rise to riches story, very quickly progressing in the autumn of 2022, winning a highway handicap on February 26th, immediately followed up by second in the Group 2 Challenge Stakes, first in the Group 3 McCartan Stakes, before on March 19th winning the Group 1 Galaxy under Robbie Dolan.
Shelby 66 put the nose in front. Wow! From the highway horse to Group 1 hero today.
But the CPR was still upset because he pulled up lame in a Class 2 race in January, before racing 5 days later. Of course, that rise to Group 1 glory showed he was well looked after and had recovered well, but he was lame in January, so that's the real problem. There was also Flo Meter. He was a 12-year-old going around in South Australian racing and began a great run of form in the immediate aftermath of the CPR criticising his owners for still racing him at 12, a post they later removed. So it's pretty clear that they don't really know anything about the racehorse and how horse racing typically operates and how a horse might be well looked after. But what about, the sport itself? A lot of races are very important cultural sporting elements of a particular country. So do they know anything about that?
Protest this grand disgrace which is called the Grand Everest Horse Race.
To be fair, Grand Everest does sound like the name of a race that Peter V'landys is cooking up to be yet another squillion-dollar race as part of the Sydney Spring Racing Carnival. That was Maureen Farquhar, the New South Wales Greens federal senator, so an actual proper politician, who put out a plan not too long ago about how to end horse racing. Two things I love about this plan. Number one, it talks about taxing betting on horse racing as part of ending horse racing. But secondly, $494 million that plan would generate to shut down all of Australian horse racing. Let's see what it took to redevelop a one race course in Melbourne, Caulfield. Yeah, I think it's safe to say that shutting down all of Australian horse racing would cost billions of dollars, probably tens of billions of dollars, given how much every project in this country seems to go over budget. I mean, if the Tasmanian Stadium is nudging $1 billion, I've got no idea how much it would take to shut down Australian horse racing, but fair to say it'd be a bit more than putting a roof on a 23,000 seat stadium in Hobart. So yeah, look, that is certainly not happening. And she actually got called out by all people of Charlie Fellows at one point for not understanding horse racing. And Fellows actually invited her to see his operations. I don't need to tell you whether or not that offer was accepted. Of course it wasn't, because again, these people aren't interested in the horse, aren't interested in anything other than shutting down this industry that they clearly know nothing about. And despite everything the CPR says on a few of their Facebook comments, it is abundantly clear that there have been times where they have argued that more horses have died because of Australian horse racing than are actually born. I love this post, by the way. First warning. First warning for what exactly? Not having to listen to them? Where can I sign up? Number 4, the CPR never provide updates when an injured horse is fine. If a horse has to be put down, then no doubt the CPR and others want to post that to socials. But if a horse recovers well, then they don't report it at all. This one is by far the most disingenuous to me, because an organisation that's all supposed to be about the racehorses, again allegedly, really should be providing updates, but it's pretty clear that they don't do that when it doesn't benefit their cause. Great examples include Valak, who fell at the second last hurdle of the running of the Briley steeplechase a few years ago, and the CPR provided no update as to him, and the Great Grey got up pretty quickly. This really goes back to Rostropovich, who finished last in a running of the Melbourne Cup in 2019. He was not put down, and fair to say that a lot of anti-racing groups were all over Rostropovich's story in the immediate aftermath of this race, based on the photos taken of him. They were certain he was going to be put down. He was not. He was well looked after, and there were no fatalities in that particular edition of the Melbourne Cup. Then there was Incentivize, who ran second in the 2021 Melbourne Cup. He went off for a spell, as did a lot of the anti-horse racing brigade. There's a very good reason why I'm doing this video in the Spring Carnival, because they seem to emerge out of the hole, much like on Groundhog Day. The groundhog comes up, has a poke around, and then goes back down, not to be seen again, seemingly forgetting that there's horse racing 365 days a year, 366 if it's a leap year. This is the one, again, that's the most disingenuous for me. Deliberately misleading your followers, deliberately misleading your audience, just because on the rare occasion, you know what, maybe horse racing people do look after their horses well. Maybe a horse that seems to be injured doesn't necessarily need to be put down. Who would have possibly thought? Similarly, no update from the CPR to say that all horses returned safely after the 2023 Melbourne Cup. This proved the most cynical part of this organisation. They're not interested in the horse and their health, but rather likes on social media. They are more interested in doing things like photoshopping an image to make a horse seem in worse health than the horse really is, rather than reporting the basic facts. Number 5, the personal attacks on horse racing people. Before I get into this argument proper, let me say something really important. I've left this particular reason right to the end. It's because I don't think we should be judging a position solely based on the worst content of its worst members. Take religion, for example. You can find terrible things being done by people of all religion, but that doesn't mean, and of no religion too, but that doesn't mean their claims are false. You have to look at them objectively and decide for yourself. But we can note the sort of hypocrisy and irony of an organisation that claims to be against putting down a horse, but constantly goes after, and really, it's the one thing they do well, the CPR, that's constantly attack people relevant to the horse racing industry. By the way, one thing I haven't told you this whole time is the CPR is a registered charity, and I'm not sure you really need to be a registered charity, and probably that really should be taken away if you refer to an Order of Australia as gay slaughterhouse. Yes, they really did that, and they've actually done it several times, to be completely honest. Mind you, that is not the worst of it. The worst of it happened in 2023 at a Nup to the Cup event. There was this terrible speech, which I will not show any footage of. I will link the viral post on Twitter in the description below. But it really was mean-spirited. It really was completely against anything that the CPR should be standing for. It was all about violent threats against people attending that race meeting, that Melbourne Cup race meeting, and the people involved. And when you remember, there were children and elderly people that made up big amounts of that particular crowd, it certainly wasn't a great light. Funnily enough, the person who did that, or the CPR defended it by saying it was satire. Yeah, that doesn't really cut it, because satire is supposed to be, what's the word? Funny.
Please. This is satire.
Funnily enough, if they want a good point on satire, the day before I recorded this video, Stephen Colbert brought back his legendary conservative commentator character from the Colbert Report. So if they want a cue on satire, maybe look at my man Colbert. But it is certainly clear that was very much the intention. This organisation, which claims to be against the violence of the horse, is actually all about violence against horse racing people and the industry itself. They want to shut down this industry on very bad pretenses without having a single clue about how horse racing works, usually never having been in contact with the horse or with the racing industry at all. Thankfully, racing is fighting back. Kick Up for Racing was founded by Vicky Leonard, largely to fight against what those like the CPR have been doing. Racing Victoria put out these ads during the 2024 Spring Carnival. This is a welcome move and much needed. Racing sitting passively will do no help whatsoever. So what racing needs to do about this is pretty clear. Fight back, and Kick Up for Racing started a few years ago and has been doing exactly that in this country, and other countries absolutely need to follow. I need to shout out CPR Lies on Twitter and Facebook, a brilliant account that has been heavily focused on getting to the bottom of this organisation and making sure calling out some of the worst things this organisation says. So if it wasn't for CPR Lies, I really couldn't have done this video. I know this has been very Australian focused, but that's because it's the most relevant to me. But I do feel like these 5 reasons are pretty prevalent across the racing world. We do really need to stand up, and in the age of social media, we really need to make sure we're involved, we're engaging in these people, and we are fighting back. The facts are on the side of the horse racing industry, so we very much need to get involved in that. If you do love racing and you also have a Discord account, may I encourage you to go to my Discord horse racing server called All About Horse Racing. It's very quiet at the moment, and that's mostly my fault. I've been very busy with a lot of projects, including the 9 Dar podcast there over on Extra Time, is another sport that I absolutely love, and I'm thoroughly enjoying doing that podcast at the moment, and of course making these YouTube videos. To finish off this particular video, I'm going to leave you with the brilliant words of Ross Stevenson. He's a massive racing fan and the host of the 3AW Melbourne morning radio show, which is consistently the most popular radio program in the country in that breakfast time slot. Stevenson has mentioned several times on that particular program, on a program he used to do on racing.com, the TV station called That's Racing, that he feels like that horse racing people are never boring. And you know what? The more I have lived, the truer that statement has absolutely seemed. Racing people are indeed the most fascinating people in all of the world of sport, really. So if you are watching this and you are anti-horse racing or might have that sort of leanings, my question to you is, it just might be because you might just be boring? Because racing people certainly are never boring. And also, to quote Stevenson, don't forget, there is never a last race. Thank you very much for watching. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Play by Play will be coming out on the second to last day of this month, so stay tuned for that.